So, as is customary, we get together every afternoon at 4 o'clock and we have somebody come on, somebody that I know, somebody that's been in my life, somebody that I know is doing good things that I want to share their story. Today eclipses all of that. We have Justice Richard Bernstein, a quick little backdrop as to who he is. My good friend Ben Sterner, who is a friend and a client, said, I have the best guest for Tell Me Something Good. We wound up connecting with Justice Bernstein. We learned about him. He is the first elected blind justice to the Michigan Supreme Court, which, if that isn't enough of an accomplishment, and I'm going to let him talk about all of his accomplishments. He's an avid runner. He's completed 20 marathons, including the New York Marathon and a full Ironman triathlon, a half an Ironman. This guy does it all. This guy is good. It's oozing all over him, and he is here today to share more goodness and something really special to me, because I train people on this. What's possible? Justice Bernstein or Richard, for today's show, tell us something good.
Well, what's good is that I'm really excited to be on your program today. And I'm really excited that you gave me the opportunity to be with you. And I'm really excited to have a chance to spend time with your audience.
What's great is we got to talk a little bit before we jumped into this. And I understand what your passion is as a disabled person. You've achieved so much in your life. So why don't we jump right in, tell people a little bit about who you are, a little broader stroke about what your accomplishments are, and then what your passion is to show other people what we talked about before.
Well, first off, I'm really excited about this because I love athletics. And even though I'm a Supreme Court justice, my passion is sports and my passion is athletics. And the reason that that's so important is because I really believe through athletic competition, it gives you a sense of strength. It gives you a sense of endurance. It gives you a sense of structure to kind of operate within your life. And I have been blessed. I've had the opportunity of completing 24 marathons. Wow. And I've also been blessed to have had the opportunity of completing a full Ironman competition. And I know people who are listening to the show are familiar with that, but for those that aren't, an Ironman's a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run. But the reason that athletics is so important to me is because as a person who is blind, a lot of the challenges we tend to have deal with self-confidence issues. It deals with that sense of isolation. When you're growing up, you're not the cool guy in school. And if you look to who the leaders are, it tends to always be the athletes. So I always kind of was one of those awkward people who struggled, who didn't have a lot of friends, and who clearly was never going to be in a leadership position. But then after I got involved with a program called Achilles, which is an amazing organization that works with the most severely disabled people, they gave me the opportunity to participate in athletic competition. And they showed me how to run. I had never done anything athletic in my entire life. And thanks to the athletics or Achilles program, it was an amazing opportunity, because what ultimately wound up happening through Achilles is they believe that anyone who wants to be athletic should have the opportunity to do so. So they brought in a team of guides and we started running, and they would give you directional cues: hard right, soft right, hard left, soft left, and you follow their directional cues and you run a tether. And you have a guide who basically is going to hold on to the tether. You hold on to that other side of the tether, and you feel the motion and the movement of their body. And as you feel their body, and as you feel the motion, and as you feel the movement, based off of the directions that they're giving you, which way you're supposed to turn, how you're supposed to turn, and what you're ultimately supposed to do. But the reason that was so important, the simple fact that I got involved in athletic competition, the simple fact that I could be on a team, the simple fact that I could have the chance to actually run a marathon changed my life. Because what it ultimately did was it taught me how to basically see myself in a different light. But most importantly, the biggest struggle I always had was an issue of self-confidence. And thanks to athletics and thanks to running and thanks to marathons and thanks to the Ironman competition, it taught me that I can do things I never thought possible, but it allowed for me to realize that, you know what, I can actually do things that I never thought. And really what it did was it taught me how to be a more confident person. And through confidence, it gave me the chance to live a life and go in a totally different direction that I never thought was possible.
I am absolutely astonished. What an amazing, amazing story. This organization called Achilles,
Yeah.
is that a local group? Is that a national group? I mean, I would assume by the name Achilles that's, the Greek god they talk about, what your weakness is.
Yes.
So I'm fascinated by this.
So Achilles, exactly right. Achilles was an all-powerful warrior, but he had that one challenge that he had to overcome and kind of work through. But Achilles is all across the world. But their entire focus is that they go to folks like me, people that have severe disabilities, right? No matter how disabled you are, they have people who don't have arms, they have people who don't have legs. They work with a lot of military folks who are coming back from service, who, basically are now quadriplegic and even paraplegic. And the idea is that anyone can have the chance to do a marathon. No matter how you do it, you should have the chance to be able to compete. And that's their viewpoint, that anybody and everyone should be given an opportunity, and that anyone and everyone, regardless of their situation, should be able to participate in really challenging programs that focus on endurance.
So in theory, all of that sounds great. And
Right.
I'm a guy that works with all different people in society about helping them get motivated and get better and all. But it is something internal. There is drive that you can't recreate. It's got to be in the person. For you, there were really no role models ahead of you. There was nobody that sort of did it before you. Where did this, this drive to be great in life, to achieve things in athletics? And I mean, you read your resume, I think anybody would look at that and go, wow, that's an incredible life achievement. And then you add the fact that you're blind. It's like, wow, that's incredible.
So that's a very kind question. I think it comes from a certain level of spirituality and a certain religious perspective that I tend to have. And I am just a believer that, we're given certain experiences for a purpose, and we're given certain experiences for a reason. And ultimately, I think that the more that you have some struggle or challenge in your life, and I think this is important, right? You don't have to be, people shouldn't be happy about it. They shouldn't be joyous about it. They shouldn't be excited about it. I think people who go through life who talk about how happy they are and who are always smiling and who are always talking about like how great everything is, me personally, from my own experiences, I don't find that to be real. I don't find it to be genuine. I think it's completely okay to be angry. I think it's okay to be frustrated. I think it's okay to be disappointed. I think it's okay to be sad. I think it's okay to be unhappy. I think these are all completely appropriate, natural emotions that arise from the human spirit, because it's really what allows for you to be an actual and real and genuine human being is what comes out of that. But I think that what you tend to find from a lot of people who have gone through certain experiences and through certain challenges and struggles is they tend to find a certain sense of purpose and a certain sense of mission. And that doesn't mean that you're happy about it. I don't want people to think that I'm this happy person. But what I am is a person who has a real focus, and a person who has a genuine sense of mission, and a person who realizes that you're here for something bigger than yourself, and that you're part of something grander or greater than you could ever imagine or even possibly attempt to comprehend. And I believe that if you're able to go through life and you live it with this sense of absolute mission, where you say to yourself, okay, I am part of something. Now, I don't know what it is. I can't begin to appreciate it, but I am part of something bigger. I'm part of something greater. I'm part of something that I can't even begin to comprehend or even begin to appreciate what it is. But if you realize that these are certain experiences that you're given, and you're able to take hold of those experiences and use them to have an impact, what you tend to find is that you don't always have a very happy life. My life isn't so happy and it's not joyous. But I will tell you is, it is certainly one that is filled with a sense of mission. And if you live your life with a sense of mission and that sense of passion and that sense of desire, then what ultimately happens is that you live it in a way where it's unbelievably fulfilling. And I think you tend to find that with a lot of folks who have severe and profound disabilities. They're going to tell you anecdotally, they're going to tell you, yeah, it isn't so easy. And it's certainly not a lot of fun. And I wouldn't wish this upon anybody else. But you know what? When they look back at the end of their day and they look back at the end of their week and they look back at the end of their life, they will come back and they will say, you know what? I did something with it, because the experiences that we're given are what drive us. The more experiences, the more purpose. The more challenge, the more passion. And ultimately, if you're able to take that and really do something with it, things can happen the likes of which you've never really imagined or comprehended.
So people who know me know that I am not a guy who is at a loss for words ever. And I am drinking in everything that you're saying in such a way my mind is exploding. Before we got started, you shared with me that your mission was not so much to show disabled people what's possible. It's to show people who are not disabled what disabled people could do. And I would love for you to elaborate on that, because I've never really heard that perspective. But the minute you said it, it shocked me and said, wow, because I already have some preset thoughts about what your capabilities could be, and none of them are written on the paper in front of me.
Well, and I appreciate this opportunity. And that's why I'm so happy to be with you today, because this is so meaningful for me, because this is a way to change perspective. So I am a Supreme Court justice, as you said in the introduction, for the state of Michigan. Now, what's interesting about that is, if you want to serve on the state's highest court, I am elected statewide. So I'm not appointed. I am an elected position, which means that there's 11 million people who live in the great state of Michigan. If you want to serve on the state's highest court, you have to be elected. It's kind of analogous to if you're running for Senate or if you're running for Attorney General or Secretary of State. It is a statewide elected position. Now, what does that mean per your question? Well, the reason that I really wanted this job was because I had been a litigator for 15 years and I loved what I did. I did all my cases pro bono. And what I did was I fought for folks who otherwise didn't have a voice in the legal system. And I loved doing that. I would mainly fight for veterans who didn't have access to public transportation or to education or to employment. And I just wanted the law to be used to give them a better life and to give them access, because access is everything for people. It's literally what defines life. It's literally what goes to the essence of what gives life its purpose and what gives life its meaning and what gives life its reason. It's that critical and that important. But what happened was I started to notice that often was the case that judges didn't really understand what it was like to have a disability. You'd be arguing these cases in front of folks and they didn't really understand. Well, why is it important for Michigan to have a stadium that veterans can attend? Why does public transit matter? Why is education something that people have to have? They didn't really have an understanding and appreciation of it. And these were decision makers. These were people who were making determinations and decisions that were going to affect the lives of folks who they didn't quite understand or appreciate the significance of the struggles or challenges that laid before them. So I decided that I was going to run for our state's highest court. Now, you have to understand, this had never been done before. The idea of a blind person running for a statewide position, That was just unheard of. It was something that had never been done before. And, you have the governor of New York who was blind, but he wasn't elected to that. He was lieutenant governor, and he came in as lieutenant governor, in a unique situation. So the question was, were people going to elect a blind person to serve on their state's highest court? And I want to take you back, if I can,
Sure.
maybe just a couple years. You have to realize the circumstance that existed just a couple of years back. It used to be that if you had a severe disability, it was really pretty much the situation that you would live in a state-run institution. That was basically going to be your life. If you had a severe disability, for the most part, the idea was that folks with severe disabilities, they should be out of sight, they should be out of mind, they should be just removed from society, because people would say, oh, the best thing for somebody with a severe disability is just to live amongst their own, to be with people that are like them. So that's where people with disabilities would live. They'd live in state-run institutions, and they would be kind of far removed from society for all intents and purposes. And we've made a lot of progress, and things have gotten so much better because now people with disabilities live amongst the community. They live in the community, they work in the community, and they're accepted by the community. And so that's how much progress we've made. But this election was going to be a real test. This election was going to test whether people were ready to go to the next level. It was one thing to allow somebody with disability to live and work in your community. But the real question was, were people ready for somebody with a severe disability, not just to live and work amongst them as an equal, but to actually be in a position where they were going to make decisions that would affect other people's lives? The idea was, were you comfortable with the notion of a severely disabled person being in a position where they are going to determine your life, where they're going to determine how you're going to live, where they're going to make decisions that are going to directly impact you? And just to give people that idea of something good, which is why I love this show, was nobody knew what the result was going to be. Nobody knew what was going to happen. We talk about how divided and how angry people were. Well, this election was a real test. Were people ready for this? Were people going to allow for this? Or were people's prejudices going to overcome them and ultimately not allow for this to happen? And what I did was, my campaign slogan that I insisted upon was totally corny, but I insisted on it. It was blind justice. That was my slogan, blind justice.
That's awesome.
and the reason that I insisted on it was blind justice. That was the key. And people thought it was, people were like, oh my God, that's the hokiest thing I've ever heard. And people were like, oh my God, he's really going to run with that slogan, blind justice. But what you have to understand was, what did that do? It allowed for people to become more comfortable with my blindness. It allowed for people to ask questions. It allowed for people to be curious. Because if you were in a situation where people weren't comfortable enough to ask you a question about your blindness, you were going to lose, and you were going to lose big time.
I agree. What you did was put it right out in front. Hey, it's here. Deal with it.
And also the idea was, what questions do you have? This allowed for, because sometimes what happens is that if you make it so that people are uncomfortable to engage with you or to talk with you or to get to know you, then what's going to happen is they're going to basically say, wow, that's so great that blind guy is running for this position. I'm so inspired. That's so exciting. But what they're going to do is they're going to walk away and they're going to say, but I'm not comfortable with that. So it's my job, if I'm going to put myself in the public arena, to allow for you to be comfortable with me. And I have to say, do you know what the best part of this was? The best resolution of this was? We won the election by 10 points. Because people overwhelmingly said that they were ready for somebody with a disability to serve as their Supreme Court justice. Because what people said was, you know what? My son gets bullied at school every day. My daughter gets picked on. My parents are living in assisted living. My house is underwater. I don't know what I'm going to do to get through the next day. And you know what? I don't want some blue chip fancy person serving as a Supreme Court justice. I'd rather have a person that understands what challenge is, understands what difficulty is, understands what hardship is. And I think that person can basically appreciate what I'm going through. And they will figure out how to do this job, but they'll do what's right, and I trust it. It's what shows that if you're able to connect with people, and Michigan is a purple state, and I'm a Democrat. I'm a very progressive Democrat. But here's the deal. We are a purple state. And what it shows, if you travel the state, you get in the car and you drive from city to city and town to town. You go from Detroit to Pontiac to Flint, up to Saginaw, up to Bay City. You hit the UP, you go to Marquette, you hit Sault Ste. Marie, you go to all the rural communities. And what you find is that if you can connect with people and they connect with you, and most importantly, they start to like you and believe in you, they will give you this opportunity regardless of your background, regardless of your situation, because if you believe in them, they'll believe in you, and they will give you the chance to serve on the state's highest court and represent them.
Again, the answer is so mind-boggling, because if we took what you just said and extracted, if you just connect with people on the right level, unbelievable things are possible. It's what one of the things I work with CEOs on is, being empathetic, and it's a skill set. It's something that, you need to understand what other people are going through in order to make the right decisions. And here is a guy like you, I'm overwhelmed and fascinated by the entire story. So I have a question. So this is all really, really good, beyond good, from a personal achievement standpoint, and you're driving for passion. So what's next? What do you've achieved so much and you look like a young guy. What's next for you? What's on the next horizon? Because I would imagine a guy like you who's not done.
Well, I think for me, I love this job. I really love this job. And quite candidly, I think the thing that I have to focus on is really doing this job well. Like, I have to do this job well, because honestly, the way that this works is if people give you an opportunity, they have high expectations. So if you put yourself out there and people say, wow, I'm going to vote for this blind guy, you better do a good job, because if you don't do a good job, then they're not going to vote for the next blind guy. And then all the work that I've dedicated my entire life to, trying to help people with disabilities and trying to help special needs, if you can't perform at the highest level in this position, then you shouldn't run for it, because it's just the way life is, right? People are going to say, all right, I'm going to give this guy a chance, but you better do a good job with it. You better rise to it. And I'm going to be honest with you, there are no excuses. No excuses. You cannot walk into a position like this and look for excuses or beg for forgiveness. Do you want to get a sense of how it's like to be a Supreme Court justice who's blind as it pertains to how we have to function in this position?
I do.
Okay, so let me just tell you what a typical day is like. Every Wednesday, there are 26 cases that are on the conference agenda. 26 cases. So before a case comes to us, we have to determine whether we're going to grant leave to even hear the case in the beginning. So cases don't just come. You have to decide whether we're going to hear it. So I want you to picture this. Every Wednesday in Lansing, Michigan, there are 26 cases that are set for the conference agenda. 26. Now I want you to think about this. These are people who basically have nowhere else to go after we make our determination. If the court rules that you're not entitled to a new trial and you've been convicted of murder and you're sentenced to life in prison without parole, and we determine that there's not enough evidence to grant you a new trial or a new proceeding, you're done. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, and that's it. There's nowhere to go after our court. So we are the ultimate decider, and we are basically making the absolute last decision as it pertains to people's lives. We're also handling the highest level of civil cases, every environmental case, every issue dealing with taxes. And no tax case comes before us. It's not going to be worth at least $1 billion, $2 billion for the most part. So these decisions are real and they are impactful. Whether it's a person who is going to determine if it's going to be determined if they'll ever see freedom again, or if it's a question as to a company is going to pay $1 billion, $2 billion, or if a parent will ever see their child again. So when you're in a high stakes situation, you have got to deliver. You cannot walk in and say, I'm not prepared, because it doesn't work that way, right? Because if you're not prepared, someone else suffers. Someone else gets hurt. Someone else's life, for all intents and purposes, come to an end. So are you ready for how this works? This is how intense it gets. So what I'll do is I come into Lansing, 9:30 a.m. Wednesday morning, okay? 26 cases on the conference agenda. What's going to happen is that the commissioner is going to say, we are now at case 18. Now, here's the crazy part. So you're probably asking yourself, do you use Braille, to basically communicate the cases and understand the cases?
It would have been a question I would ask, yes.
Exactly. The answer is absolutely not. Braille is completely ineffective in this situation. And do you know why that is? Because if I have to review a transcript of a murder trial, you cannot put that transcript into Braille. It's impossible. How can you take a month-long murder transcript of a murder case and try to Braille it? It's simply impossible. It cannot be done, right? So you can't use Braille. And the other thing is, if I give you one textbook page, you're going to give me 65 Braille pages, right? So for one textbook, I'm going to get 65 Braille pages. So it's just not practical. It's just not something that you can even remotely do. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just not going to work. So Braille's out of the option. So then you're going to say to me, well, what about using a computer? How about technology? Will the computer work? Will technology work? Can you do it that way? Well, guess what? Technology isn't going to work either, because if I'm on my computer and I'm trying to listen to my headset, I'm not able to communicate with you, right? I'm not able to communicate with you if I'm on my computer. Do you follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if I'm too busy listening, I can't explain or conduct or basically engage with the other 6 justices. So do you know what I do? I memorize all 26 cases every single week.
Oh my God.
And when I say memorize, so what I'll do is I will internalize all those cases. Now, I can't memorize those cases word for word. That's not possible, because it's like I can't remember a month-long transcript. You just can't do that. But I will remember all the key legal issues of that case. So I'll know all the major legal issues of each case. I will commit those to memory. But here's the crazy part. We're not done yet, because here's what's going to happen. The commissioner is going to say, okay, justices, we are now at case 18. Case 18 is a carjacking on Woodward Avenue that resulted in 2 homicides. When I hear carjacking resulting in 2 homicides, that will trigger the case in its entirety. So when I hear that, it's my mental trigger. So I hear, okay, carjacking, 2 homicides. Oops, okay, I remember that case. And that case will come in its full fruition, and I will memorize that case in its entirety. So I'll know that case to the level that I can engage with you on that case, debate and discuss with you on the case. But here's the next part to this that makes it a little bit crazier. This is where it gets really rough. We're a common law system. So I can't just walk in. Let's just say hypothetically, I feel you should have a new trial. I feel that the judge was biased. I feel that the jury wasn't selected properly. I feel that hearsay testimony was admitted in a way it shouldn't be. I can't just say to you, well, colleagues, it's unfair. He should have a new trial. That's unfair. No, that's not how this works, because they're not going to listen. You have to build an argument. You have to not only know that case, but you have to know all the relevant common law cases. So there's going to be about 5-10 cases that are on point. And those are cases that support your position. So those are cases that are really important cases. So you have to be able to say, well, look, in case X, Y, and Z, the court held that when the evidence was admitted, it was hearsay testimony. So as a result, it should have been deemed inadmissible. So because that evidence was admitted, it was biased, and it went against the great weight, and it impacted the jury. So you have to be able to cite all the cases that are on your side, that are relevant, that go to your argument. But there's one last thing you have to do. You have to be ready for all the cases that work against you, because one of your colleagues is going to say, oh, but Richard, you forgot about case A, B, and C. And in that case, the hearsay testimony was deemed to be not hearsay. It was deemed to be admissible. It was deemed that it wasn't against the great weight of the evidence. You have to refute that. You have to be able to say, but wait a minute. You're citing case A, B, and C, but A, B, and C isn't relevant because A, B, C's fact pattern is totally different. Here, we're dealing with C, D, and E. And C, D, and E, the fact pattern focuses on these key points. And obviously, A, B, and C doesn't work. You got to focus on D, E, and F because the fact pattern is different. The court ruling was different. The evidence was different. The preponderance standard was different. So you have to engage using common law to make the argument to basically allow for the other justices to see where you stand on a certain case in order to convince them as to whether or not they should vote with you or not. But the key is that it doesn't matter how hard it is. It doesn't matter how much stress there is. It doesn't matter how difficult it is. I chose to do this because when I walk out of that conference room, my life goes on. But if I'm not successful in pitching an argument, someone is going to spend the rest of their life in prison. So the key to this is that you go into this thinking, look, it's not really a situation where you can enter it thinking, okay, you know what, it's okay to fail. Because if it's just affecting you, that's one thing. But if you fail because you're not prepared or you're not ready for this, then you shouldn't be doing it because people's lives are depending on your ability to be prepared and be able to do the job that you asked the voters to give you the chance to do.
So even the way you pitch that to us is intoxicating. I could talk to you all day. I have two final questions.
Yeah.
The first question is, so which is harder, doing the Ironman or judging the cases that you do?
I would say the Ironman was the most difficult experience I ever had because I just want to kind of answer your question by kind of telling you the story. The Ironman was the most difficult thing because I want you to picture, if you could, it was a beautiful morning in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I want you to imagine diving into a frigid body of water.
No, thank you.
Now, the water temperature of Lake Coeur d'Alene was 55 degrees.
Oh.
Now, wait, I want you to imagine swimming in total darkness, not having any idea where you are or where you're going. I want you to imagine getting kicked in the face by all the other swimmers. And I want you to imagine trying to surface, but you can't because there's other people on top of you. And I want you to imagine one last thing. I want you to imagine the rope that connects you and your guide to become entangled and ensnared with other swimmers and ultimately starts to take you below the surface.
Oh my God.
The harder you swim, the harder you attempt to break free, the faster the rope starts to take you under the water. Now, I want you to imagine kind of getting through all of that. And I just have to throw in a little bit of a spiritual perspective as it pertains to your question, because you come to realize at a certain point that for someone like me, yes, you know, I am very mortal, and yes, God created me infirmed. But what you realize, going back to your first question about people with disabilities, is we have the strongest and most powerful of spirits. And if we're given the opportunity, our spirits and souls can rise and take us to places that the human body can't even begin to reach. Because so much of it's determination. And then I'll just answer you quickly. After you finish doing your 2.4 mile swim, you then ride a tandem bike for 112 miles. Now your guide is in the front and you're in the back, and he's going to give you a directional cue. He's going to say, lean right, lean left, hard lean right, hard lean left. And if you don't follow his directions to a T, you know what's going to happen? When you're going at 45 miles an hour down a mountain, that bike's going to flip. If he leans and you don't, you're flipping over. So you've got to be in concert with your guide at all times. And the minute he tells you to do something, you have to do it immediately. Otherwise, you're flipping right over. In fact, the Ironman that I did, there was a wonderful young girl, well, a young lady. I guess I sound like a grandpa now, but like she actually fell off of her bike and she broke her neck. And it's dangerous. You've got to really take it seriously and have respect for the competition. And then you just do your quick 26.2-mile run where you're just on a tandem. And I would just simply say, kind of in answer to your question, I think the hardest thing isn't necessarily the Ironman, but this is the key thing. The hardest thing was I was in New York City. And this, I think, goes to kind of wrap up our whole discussion in terms of where you get the passion and the energy. And I was walking in Central Park, and I love Central Park, and I've memorized the park, so I can walk through Central Park on the loop, East and West Drive, without an escort or without a guide. I can do it independently. As long as I've got my cane, I've memorized the footsteps and the footing of the park, that I can do a walk, not a run, but I can do a walk independently without a guide. And I'll just tell you a very quick story. So it was August 13th, a beautiful morning in New York. I had done 17 marathons. My body was in mint condition. I was feeling great, and life could not have been better. And as I was walking in the pedestrian lane, a bicyclist was going over 35 miles an hour. And because he was going at such a high rate of speed, he couldn't maintain control. And in doing so, he veered into the pedestrian lane where I was walking, and he hit me in the back at 35 miles an hour. He hit me in the back. It shattered my whole body. And I had to spend over 10 weeks. Think about this, 10 weeks at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, 10 weeks in the hospital, not rehab. Before we did what was rehab, I was in the hospital for 10 weeks. And I literally had to learn how to do everything from the beginning. 17-time marathoner, Ironman. And I had to learn how to do everything from the very beginning. And it was interesting because you learn there are simple things that you really long for. You miss what it's like to take a shower. You miss what it's like to use the bathroom. You miss what it's like to do anything without having to be carried. You miss what it's like to sleep through the night without having to arrive at an indescribable level of pain. And I'm sharing this with you because at the end of the day, what it's really about, life is about the little things. It's those little things that you realize are so important, like having people around you, like having friends, like having family, like being able to go out to a restaurant, like having a job, like having some sense of independence. And I will tell you that I have to live now, per your question, with tremendous pain because I have a shattered hip and crushed pelvis. But since the accident, and since I worked on my recovery, and since I worked on learning how to walk again and doing all that stuff from the very beginning, I've still done 7 more marathons. That's what gets me to my 24. But here's the deal. They're not the kind of marathons I used to do. I used to be fast. I used to be graceful. I used to be a good runner. Now, running with a shattered hip and crushed pelvis is unbelievably painful. It's a pain level that you can't even begin to understand or even begin to imagine. But I do it because I don't want to, if I stop doing that, I'll stop doing other things. And so basically the way I see life now is that, yeah, I'm a slow marathon runner, but I'm still out there because it's a different challenge and it's a different experience altogether, one that I just feel the need to get through. But I'll end our time with this. I know we're running short, but I'll end it with this, just to kind of, you want to hear something good. This is the essence of it. If you find a sense of mission and a sense of purpose, it takes away that kind of sense of sadness. And this is why. Because of my situation and because of the challenges I faced, I was in such pain and agony, I sued the city of New York. Now, I didn't ask for any money, not a dime, not a nickel, not a cent. I didn't want a dime from New York, but I wanted them to fix Central Park. I wanted that park to be made safer because there were things that the city could do that weren't going to eliminate this, but it was going to make it better. It wasn't going to stop accidents from happening, but there were simple things that the city of New York, if it chose to do, could do to make the park safer and better for people. And so basically getting into litigation with the city that went on for a number of years where I wasn't asking for a dime or a nickel or a cent, it gave me the sense of purpose to live with the pain that I now have, because I can now say that, okay, something else came out of this. It wasn't just this sad tragedy. It wasn't just this sad coincidence, but something came of it. You know, I made it better for somebody else. And if you have that purpose and if you have that mission and you have that sense of, okay, there's a bigger reason, there's a bigger protocol, there's a bigger mission, and that ultimately as a result, something emerged that basically allowed for things to be better for other people, and that you took a difficult situation and left it a little bit better than it was, that allows me to kind of work through the pain and agony that I have to feel each day as a person who now contends with chronic pain. And if I can, I want to just share one last story that kind of connotes all the things that we've been talking about, because you've brought out the best in me and you've gotten me so excited. And I've basically been working on murder cases all day today. So this is a really uplifting reprieve for me. But I just want to share one story that I think really encapsulates all of this, everything we've talked about. And if it's okay, I'm going to do a little bit spiritual because I think it's meaningful for me that way. But here's the thing. There's a story that we all know, how an angel came down to Jacob as Jacob was sleeping, and there existed a major battle. And this battle raged all the way through the night until the sun rose the next morning. And ultimately, when the angel found that he couldn't defeat Jacob, he gave him a new name, and he blessed him with the name Israel. And that is just translated to mean one who struggles with God. But here's the deal. The angel did not leave Jacob without an injury. Jacob was actually left with a crushed hip, and he would live his life with tremendous pain. He'd have a limp, and he would only know agony for the remainder of his days. And the reason that I share this story is I believe this to be true. I don't think we have to be happy. I don't think we have to be joyous. I don't think we always have to find the best in everything. I don't have to be one of those people that's always out smiling, saying how great things are, because I think that's unrealistic, as I said in the beginning. But this is my belief as I interpret that scripture. I believe it this way. I believe that the reason that the angel left Jacob injured was it was only through his injury that he could understand pain, that he could understand hardship. And only through understanding pain was he able to empathize. And through his empathy, he was able to connect. And as we talked about in the beginning, it was through Jacob's connection that he was able to become a leader and the founder of a nation. And I really believe that if God had not put me in a position where I had to know pain, being born blind, using athletics to overcome blindness, only to get struck down again, having to learn how to walk again, and now having to live with my own physical pain that comes out of that, I really believe that those kind of challenges, all the challenges that we have, getting through school, having to rise to the occasion, having to work 10 times harder. If it takes you an hour, it takes me 5 to do the same exact thing. So if it takes you an hour, it takes me 5. And I believe that all of those things culminate in the notion that through those experiences, it allows for me to be kinder, it allows for me to be warmer, it allows for me to be more patient, and it allows for me to be more understanding and more empathetic of those who come before me. And ultimately, without those life experiences, I don't believe I'd be as good or as kind or as merciful or as understanding as a judge as I'm able to be today.
So, wow. You've heard the term drop the mic. Bernstein, bam. You knocked it out of the park. I feel blessed to have heard that story. I feel blessed to know you. I hope this is not the last time that we speak. And whatever it is that I can do to make your life better, easier, more enriched, please count on me, because today was extremely special. And I am super grateful that you shared your passion and your story with us. That is something really, really good.
Well, thank you. And God bless you. And like I got to tell you, that's why I love it, because it is something good.
You're the man.
Thank you. God bless.
Ooh.